We have game one in San Antonio just over 12 hours from right now. The ninth NBA Finals matchup all time, where one team swept the round before the finals and the other went 7 games. The team that swept went 5-3 in the finals. The 3 teams that went 7 that wound up winning it were the 2013 Heat, the 98 Bulls, and the 68 Celtics, meaning if you didn't have LeBron, MJ, or Bill Russell, you lost. Here was Victor Wembanyama on his emotions after Game 7 in OKC.
The emotion was really something I haven't felt in a while. I don't even know since when. And coming back down from this is a challenge, and it's not done yet. We still need to really come back down to earth and realize that we haven't done the hardest yet. The job isn't done at all. So we still got about, I don't know, what time is it? Like 30 plus hours to recenter.
So doing the math, that means you said that about 18 hours ago. The game is tonight, and our crew is all up and early in San Antonio. That's Vincenzo, and that's Monica McNutt and Brian Windhorst. I will start with you. That was pretty open and honest from Wemby, right? Acknowledging that, look, that was a big win for this franchise and for him, which it was, and that it's going to take a little something to get ready to play a game one after that.
Look, I'm going to tell you, this is one of the most raw things I've seen at a media day at a finals I can remember. And, you know, what he's basically saying is that was such an emotional victory over Oklahoma City, which is their bitter rival who they've been targeting for a year, basically, that they're not over it yet. And he's like, we got until tomorrow night to get over it. And look, they've done their film study, they've done their practice, and the emotion in the building tonight will be intense, and I'm not worried about it. But I appreciated Victor Wembanyama openly saying that he is struggling with something he's never done before, which is coming off a humongous win and then having to prepare for an NBA Finals.
So that's the vibe around the Spurs. Monica McNutt, who does the Knicks games on the radio, what has the vibe been around the Knicks ahead of this game one?
Well, Greeny, there's tremendous respect, obviously, for the opponent on the other side, particularly Victor Wembanyama. But yesterday when I asked OG Anunoby about preparing for this team outside of Wemby, he described the rest of that guard crew as relentless, understanding that they're fast, they're terrific rebounders. And while they're not coming off of, quite the emotional experience, Jalen Brunson called out that they had to be better about making sure they were attentive to the details and the mindsets to avoid the 3.5 quarter slow start we saw when they returned to action in the Eastern Conference Finals versus the Cavs after some.
Well, we know that he's going to play. Like, the Knicks are doing a little subterfuge by saying he's officially listed as questionable, but everything that we've heard says that he's going to play. How effective will he be remains to be seen following a surgery like that, whether it's a pinky, a hand, or whatever it was. Like, the Knicks actually allowed us to see Mitchell Robinson practice yesterday. And I think that gives us a little bit of glimpse into how confident they are. Remember, Greeny, this guy plays 15 minutes a night, and there's so much weight on how important he is, whether that's because he's on the offensive glass or he's the Victor Wembanyama defender. Like, they feel like they need to have all hands on deck, and this is not a minor thing for the Knicks or for Mitchell Robinson.
Yeah, and Wendy, it feels important to me because, and it feels like a long time ago that you and I were having these conversations, because the Knicks have been so dominant, it hasn't really mattered. But their starting center, Karl Anthony Towns, is prone to getting into foul trouble, sometimes frustratingly so. And so Mitchell Robinson may not be counted on in every game. You know there will be at least 1 or 2 in this series where they will need a big-time performance from him.
Yeah, I can appreciate why people are like, why are they all talking so much about a backup? Well, here's the thing. When they played in the NBA Cup, Mitchell Robinson had 10 rebounds on the offensive end of the court, 15 total. He's very valuable. And the Knicks showed their hand, so to speak, Greeny, because it wasn't his pinky. It was his 5th metacarpal. It's a broken hand. When you break this part of your hand, it's known as a boxer's fracture, because most of the time it means you hit something. And Mike Brown came out and said this was not an injury that happened in practice or a game. So Mitchell Robinson had this injury away from the court, and now he's got to get out there and play, and his teammates need him. And so he didn't talk to the media yesterday. He didn't offer anything up, whatever. He gets to play tonight, and he could be a factor against Victor Wembanyama. Obviously, Jalen Brunson's performance is going to be more important, but Mitchell Robinson coming out and doing that in front of the media yesterday was very relevant.
We will do a lot of Xing and Oing a little bit later in this hour. But Monica, just quickly, what is your best guess? And if you actually have inside information, we'll take that too, of what the Knicks' plan is against Wembanyama tonight. They've had, well, I guess they didn't know who they were playing until Saturday, but they've had multiple days to get ready for this. They've played him already multiple times this year. What's your best guess of how they attack Wembanyama tonight?
They're going to do their best to get him out of the paint, Greeny. Now, exactly what that is going to look like, I don't quite understand. I think what we saw in Atlanta was a lot of different screening actions with different guys, and obviously Karl-Anthony Towns can bring a guy out of the paint. But I do know that they're going to try to move him out of the paint, which is smart. That's what they've done in this series. And then the combination of Towns and Robinson, they want him to run up and down the floor and feel them physically in terms of blockouts, screens, cutting the whole bit. That's what we saw in Vegas during the NBA Cup.
And Vinny, we can talk about this in depth a little bit later in the hour, but the Spurs are really two separate things. They are Wembanyama, who is unlike anything we've ever seen, and then they are a relentless collection of perimeter players with size and tenacity and defensive ability, and ultimately the series may come down to them every bit as much as it comes down to the Frenchman in the center, right?
Yeah, like we think of the Eastern Conference Finals and we thought of how the Knicks hunted James Harden. There's nobody to hunt when you're talking about the San Antonio Spurs. It's not just Stephon Castle. It's Devin Vassell. It's Keldon Johnson. It's Ron Harper's son. I keep calling him Ron Harper's son, but that's what he is. He's Dylan Harper. Like, there's so many guys. There's just waves. They're all built similarly. They're all 5 and 6'8", and they're all energetic and hungry. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. All right, we'll have much more again. We'll XO this game as we get rolling.
Maintain him on both the offensive side and limit his impact defensively.
Well, obviously a lot of people have been asking me, how do you stop Wembanyama? But I don't think there's no way to actually stop this kid. He's unbelievable. His talent level is through the roof. He can do obviously everything on the court. When I look at him play sometime, I always wish he played a little bit more like a traditional big man, but he has more of like a KD approach to his game, which makes him very dangerous. But I also think that gives the Knicks the opportunity to actually guard him, right? I think that, I read something the other day that per 100 minutes, OG actually has guarded him the best than anybody, in the NBA this season. So the fact that, I think with him, the fact that he likes to catch the ball out, on the perimeter, I think OG obviously is, quick enough to guard him, physical enough to guard him, and hopefully, to only allow him to limit his dribbles to like 1 or 2 dribbles, and hopefully OG makes him pick it up, or someone defensively will be coming over, just crowd it up a little bit, because he is apt to turn the ball over if you actually really aggressively go at him and double team him. Also, we think about, Mitchell. I think that when he's in the game, he should be overly physical with Victor, just constantly banging into his body. He should not be able to keep him off the glass. And I think that the physicality over the course of this series can eventually start to wear on him. And hopefully he won't have the same legs to make those 3-pointers and make some of the shots that he's been making, towards the end of the game. So I just think it's going to take an active effort. I think we have 3 bona fide guys, or the Knicks have 3 guys that can actually guard him. And I think first they have to start with being physical, but also, double teaming him and just making it very uncomfortable out there, keeping him off of rhythm. Sometimes come, sometimes don't come. Just try to play the games, play the defensive game with him with the cat and mouse, and, hopefully can disrupt him a little bit. But I think that's the only hope that you have, right? I just don't think there's nobody that can actually stop him, but we can definitely try to figure out ways to contain him.
I like the "we" you're throwing in there. I know where your heart lies right now with the Knicks. Let's talk about your boys here. Now, they've been on a historic run. The last 11, in terms of efficiency, we've never seen this in the regular season or in the playoffs. How do the Spurs contain the Knicks?
It's going to be tough. Obviously, the head of our snake is Jalen Brunson. I think that in this series, they do have, 1 or 2 guys that can actually guard him one-on-one. But as we know, Jalen is so crafty that it's just tough to stop him one-on-one as well. I think the one thing that he's done an unbelievable job of in this playoffs is trusting his teammates. He's been sharing that basketball like crazy. And because he's been doing that, everyone now has confidence. Everybody's hitting shots. You got Bridges hitting shots. You got Hart hitting shots. You got Shamet coming off, making contributions and making shots. OG shooting the ball great. So, it's going to be tough to stop the Knicks the way they've been playing. Like you said, they're on this historic run on the offensive side of the basketball. So, I think the Spurs defensively, they can be a disruption to that. But, I think that, overall, if we continue to play the same way we've been playing, Cat, sometimes being a facilitator on the offensive end, them sharing those duties, I think it's going to be tough for them to figure out how to put a finger on any in particular player, and will make the Knicks very dangerous to stop on the offensive side.
Okay, we looked at both teams from a series perspective. Let's lock in on game one here. The Spurs are 4.5-point favorites. You heard Wembanyama say before in that sound, we have to turn the page. They had an emotional game on Sunday, but now it is the NBA Finals starting on Wednesday night. We know you're a former Knick. We just talked about that. But in game one, who do you like in San Antonio as they host?
Well, I just would say, you look at like the last time they, had a 9-day break when they played against the Cavs, and they came out a little rusty, but they were at home, right? And they were able to get to the fourth quarter and make a run. I think that would be obviously more difficult to do in San Antonio, the fact that they haven't played in about 9 days. So I think that rust will probably be our demise. And I think that even if that does happen, I think that light an additional spark within our team or within the Knicks, and we'll put them in position, because I got the Knicks, winning in 6. So in order to win in 6 games, you got to lose a game or 2. So I got them losing game 1, and then maybe another game, in San Antonio. But tomorrow I would take the Spurs to win game 1, just because they're just coming out of a tough series, and, they still got their game legs under them.
Okay, you got Spurs winning game 1. That means, as you said, our and we Knicks winning this thing in 6. That means they got to win 4 of the next 5. Why do you think they'll be able to do that when they're going to go down 1 game?
I just think because just the overall confidence of where the team is currently, right? I think that we obviously have the veteran leadership. We've been down this road 3 years already together, so we've been through a lot of, battles, and I just feel like we're just a better built team to win the championship this season. And, I think the home games, I think the between the fans and celebrity row with everything that's going to be going on in the city, I would say we're going to win both of those games at home. Obviously, they got to win 1 in San Antonio. And then, we'll see what happens when we go back. But, the way I see this whole thing setting up is a Broadway play. They got to win it in New York, right? We got to win the championship in New York so everybody can celebrate in real time, the 2026 championship.
Al, if they win this thing in New York, that joint down. I don't know if I want to be there or not, but we will find out. Game 1 tips off Wednesday night. Thanks, my man.
Yes, sir.
All right, you take a look at the Game 1 preview, 8:30 in San Antonio.